The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Student was killed only because he married a girl from the upper caste.
Dalit man was allegedly kidnapped, beaten and forced to drink urine by miscreants in Rajasthan. The incident took place on 20.
Every 15 minutes a crime is committed against a Dalit.
It's so painful, look, to see a Dalit speaking up. I love it. I live for this moment.
They never did it like me, they'll never do it like me.
I am not scary.
Hello, hi, Mumbai.
My comedy is not scary. The idea of a Dalit with a microphone, that's scary to them.
It can be anything religious, caste, anything taboo, they just don't want to talk about it.
It's not complex, it's pretty simple. They don't talk about it because it questions their, authority.
আমরা যে কাস্টের লোক সেই কাস্ট লুকানো যাবে না কাস্ট ভগবানের দান না চারটে কাস্ট লোকেই বানাইছে
In India, whenever you talk about caste, you should be scared.
Oh, he'll get killed.
My only objective is to say whatever I want and in a way that I should not get into trouble too.
কত মানুষের মরিছে জলের মধ্যে ডুবে ডুবে ধরেছি এত অত্যাচার করেছে
Fucking nightmare is going on.
The tricky point is to make it funny. Majority of the people don't like what you're saying anyway.
His perspective is what makes it funny. He makes it funny. That's not funny.
Funny comes before name, before surname. So if you're funny, then yeah, you're going through.
I used to think I'm superior, to be honest. मतलब अलग ग्लास में पानी दे रहे तू you suck bro.
I do feel scared, yes. But what to do? I mean, I don't have any other stories to tell.
That's the best part of your comedy, how I've seen it. They gave you this life and they gave you this story and now they are paying to listen to that story and you will laugh at them.
I can see words of a Take joke like you take all our lands.
I would like to present to you a fella untouchable. I am an untouchable.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, residents of Easton. This is Bill Ames, the co-host of the Film Connection. We broadcast a different show every month now for 22 years, and it's typically about our friends and neighbors and other here in Easton and in the Hockomock who are involved in media production in all different ways, either acting or producing or whatever. So it's an exciting world, and it's a world that's always changing, and it's a world we can all relate to because you got to watch Netflix and all these things, and so it's always interesting to meet these people who are living a very exciting lives. Now, the Film Connection wouldn't be possible without my co-host, who has stayed the course for many years of her youthful life, I should quickly say, as a fellow 80-year-old, and we're my great honor to introduce Priscilla Almquist Olsen, the keeper of the flame here on the Film Connection. So Priscilla, over to you to introduce our guest.
Thank you, Bill. How sweet. Isn't he sweet?
Yeah. Tish tosh.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to welcome back to Film Connection Mike Noone, a graduate of Canton High School, a prodigy of Ed McDonough, who is the media coach at Canton High and who is I am advised, retiring at the end of this year. I hope we're invited to the party. And Mike has just returned from India. He has finished a feature documentary about one of the most popular comedians in India, who is from the lowest caste, a system of social discrimination, actually, which has been outlawed in India, but which still persists to this day. His humor is all about that. He wants to make people uncomfortable, as you saw in the trailer that we just heard. And I'm going to ask Mike to tell us what it's like to have lived in that culture for so many months and produce this movie, this absolutely unique movie. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Priscilla and Bill, for having me back again. Very excited to be here. Thank you all. So I spent a little over 3 months, most recently, out in India, finishing up the documentary. I had gone in January to do my initial edits, and once I had come back to the States to finish up the editing process in like February, March, we realized that there were a lot of holes left in the story or pieces of B-roll and stuff we had missed. So they decided to bring me back out for a few more months to kind of finish editing and shoot the remainder of it. So I had an absolute blast. I'm actually going back at the end of December for another month or so. So I love it out there, and I'm excited to go back, actually.
So what airline do you fly?
Fly different airlines. Typically, so Indigo is a good Indian airline.
Indigo.
Yeah, if I'm going from the US, I would always recommend people go through like the Middle East as opposed to Europe. If you like lay over in Qatar Airways is really nice. Etihad, any of the Middle Eastern airlines are very nice, super comfortable, very high end, great food too. That's huge.
I see these, we'll get to the subject here immediately, but I'm curious about those A380s. What kind of plane do you fly?
You know, I don't know. So
that's the enormous one.
Yeah, there are some big ones. The exciting part about this era of my career is now this is the first time that I'm actually being flown by the clients out there. So I can happily say I don't know what kind of plane they fly me on. Yeah.
So you go from Boston to Qatar.
Yeah, either through Qatar or Abu Dhabi.
And then you take a shorter hop.
Yeah, like 6 hours from there. It usually takes me like 25 to 32 hours to get over there in total.
Yeah.
So quite a stretch.
Wow, that's quite a
journey.
So do you? So when you're over, just getting the basics here, do you drink the water, or what's the scene?
Yeah, so I stay in the Bangalore, which is they call it like the Silicon Valley of India. It's a very techy city. All of the technology companies are based out of there. So the water there is good to drink. The issue is like there's different types of minerals in it, and they treat their water differently. So that can give you some upset stomach. But as far as safety, the water is usually okay to.
Yeah, it's all about the bacteria level.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So you arrive, and what happens? They greet you at the airport in your limo, in the limo?
I wish. It's an Uber.
Next 10 years from now, they'll be doing that.
Yeah. On this trajectory, I hope. But yeah, they scoop me from the airport. It takes about an hour to get into the city. And then I'm staying at an Airbnb there with hosts. So they got caretakers and all that. It's a really, really nice place that they have.
That's good, so you get to meet some locals.
Yeah, I'm living with locals even, so it's super nice.
Everybody speaks English, right? Or pretty much?
Yeah, most speak
educated,
English or
so
know about, at the very least, we can communicate, and I've been learning some Hindi as well to help myself get around a little.
Yeah, because in the Untouchables, I don't think many of them probably speak English.
No, certainly not. Maybe some in the city, but it's outside, like the rural areas, no, very, very infrequent.
Okay, I have a question. How does one know that one is a member of the untouchable class? How does one know that?
It's all based through your family and birth.
So in other words, the name, your last name will give it away?
Yes. So it's a big practice to ask for somebody's name and then to ask for their surname as well so that they can identify what caste the surname is usually from.
Well, do people change their names?
It's a good question. I would.
Right.
But
well, your accent gives you away or something, you know.
Yeah, there's other factors. It's different than like race, where you can see almost at sight. It's definitely more like socially layered than that, but definitely the name gives you away. Your occupation can give you away. In cities and really urban areas, the upper caste kind of disappears, blends away, so to speak. It's not as big of a like a social norm anymore, but it's definitely prevalent in like the lower ends of the spectrum.
So like Gandhi, was he was not an untouchable?
No, he was actually he was a Brahmin. He was the highest caste.
From the get-go.
Yeah. And he was upset with the British for treating him like one of the untouchables. The British came over and they grouped all of them together, and he didn't like being treated as an untouchable. So he was like, you know what, let's get rid of these British. That's an oversimplification a little bit, but
it fits.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah.
So what was your biggest challenge in making the movie?
Probably learning enough about the situation in Manjeet's life and his culture to adequately tell his story. He was, I've never been to India prior to this year. I have no connection to India prior to this year. So to go over there and be able to learn, one, to understand the story that I'm telling, and then two, to be able to tell it in a way that people in different cultures could understand. And I could show this film to American audiences without any, Indian context, and they'll still be able to understand, enjoy, and relate. So that was a little difficult.
And how did you do that?
They put me onto a lot of books, movies. We watched a lot of cinema, a lot of Manjeet's favorite directors. We talked about that last time. Satyajit Ray is a big influence of his. I read a lot of anti-caste literature. So The Annihilation of Caste by Baba Saheb, who's the constitution writer for the country, who is also an untouchable, and he wrote a big article against it. So things like that. And then just through living the day-to-day, like I said, I was living with locals there, so I was getting engaged in the culture, finding out what all these terms mean and things mean. So yeah, it was a journey. I'm still learning, obviously, but it's been very much, I think we've done good.
Well, plus Africa's in your worldview, right? Haven't you been to Africa, Nigeria, as I recall?
Yeah. So I lived in Ghana for a year as well.
Making films?
Not making film. I was studying geography actually at that time. So I was doing geographic information sciences. So I bounced around like South Africa, East Africa, North Africa that whole year.
This is when you were in college?
Yeah, I was 20 years old.
God, how about that, Priscilla?
Yeah. So your journey was not always film.
No, I would say that it was always film, but I took a detour. I went to film school, and then in the first semester, I was like, this is not what I want to continue pursuing. I felt like my classes, they weren't putting a camera in my hands, and that was kind of the biggest thing for me, is it was too much theory. And coming from Ed McDonough's class, I felt like I was already so far ahead in that respect that I switched into geography, and I knew I wanted to travel with films, so I thought that would be a good, field of study to prepare myself to go out into the world and do that more.
So Ed McDonough really prepared you.
Yeah.
So he lit the flame.
He did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's the key, right?
Right.
It's not hard to learn this stuff, but you got to want to learn it.
So refresh our recollection. How did you get interested in Manjeet? How did you learn about him? And
through that woman, right?
What?
Yeah, through his business manager.
Remember she came here? She was here in the show?
Yes, right, okay.
Yeah.
My recollection is refreshed.
So you knew her, you met her somewhere?
Yeah, so she's dual citizenship, India and the US, and she was studying here. She went to Harvard School, and I met her. She was dating someone at the time from here, and he was a musical artist, and he needed someone to take headshots of him. So they found me online just out of nowhere, and then I stayed in touch with Malini because I love India. She's a great person, and I was badgering her like, please bring me to India, please bring me to India. And she kept saying, when I have a project for you, to work on, we'll bring you out here. Then she met Manjeet on her return to India. And then, you know, he started to want to do a documentary. They were having some issues with their original cinematographer and editor and whatnot. So Malini said, oh, I have an idea. Let me bring Mike out and see if he's interested. And
amazing.
They pitched it to me. I was the easiest, yes.
So it was really serendipitous. It's really amazing. Our relationships often dictate the course of our journey. And in your case, it really did. Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, big time. So what were some of the initial challenges when you started filming?
So the initial challenges were the timeline that they had wanted to get done in. This was Manjeet's first film. He's never gone into film before, same with Malini. So their timeline perspectives were a little bit shifted. They didn't understand the full work that's needed to do a full film. So when I first went, I was only supposed to be a supervising editor. I wasn't even supposed to touch the timeline of this. I was gonna just go for 2 weeks, see what kind of footage they had, and help them build a cohesive storyline. Now, once we started doing that and they saw the amount of work that was needed and going into it, they extended my stay for a month. And then at the end of the month, we had only edited that trailer, which we watched. So the first full month I was there, only the trailer got done. And that kind of put into perspective for them how much work is actually needed to do these kind of projects. So from there, they asked me if I would come on as co-director, if I would come back to India again, shoot more, take over the full project as the senior editor, and do all that. So originally, I was supposed to be done at the end of January, and now we're here in November, and I'm still working on it to this day.
Wow. So this is going to be, what, a half hour?
It's going to be an hour and 15 minutes.
Wow.
An hour and 50?
15.
Oh, 15.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good, that's exactly what you want. That's the exact good time.
So the first cut that I did when I was originally editing down was 3.5 hours when I was originally putting everything in.
Wow.
So I had to then take that and crunch it. So that's really tough.
You just watch it over and over again, and every time you watch it, right, you think you can see another opportunity to cut it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Sometimes like the same information will be said by different people in different ways, and realizing, oh, they're actually giving the audience the same takeaway lets you kind of cut.
Yeah, it's like writing.
Yeah, exactly.
It takes a while. Eventually you spot everything that's superfluous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm. Or repetitious.
Absolutely. So can we switch the subject for a second to his experiences in sports journalism?
Well, let's, sure, and then we'll go back to that movie. Because
Yeah, we'll go back to the movie.
Okay, go ahead.
So tell us, before we started the show, you were telling us about how you were involved in sports journalism at Boston College. Give us your journey there.
Yeah, so I have to start this out again, shouting out Ed McDonough. He got me this interview position through Mark McDonald, who works at Boston College, another Canton guy. Basically, what I do there is I'm a camera operator for their sports broadcasting. Yeah. So if you were to watch any BC sports on television, like their basketball, volleyball, anything like that, I'm usually on one of the cameras for that. And I do that multiple times a week during the season. It's my favorite job I've ever had, actually.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested because I have a cousin of mine. He's, I guess, in his late 30s now, and he does sports broadcasting, and he was raised in near Annapolis, Maryland, and he loves sailing. He went to, I forget the name of the college, St. John's or something, where they have a huge sailing program. It's like football and hockey combined, and they're famous for it. So we went there. He always loved sailing. And then he moved to Annapolis, and Annapolis is one of the hubs of yacht racing, or it's like Marblehead or whatever. So he went to this bar, which is the favorite bar that the sailing community goes to. Everybody knows your name type of thing. So what they would shoot videos of the race, and one day he got up and he started narrating I guess, and they gave him without a mic, and then they gave him a mic the next time, so he would narrate because he knew all the people in the race, you know, because he was just a very young guy at that point, 20s or something. So now he is the lead broadcaster for the America's Cup, all this stuff now, and he's bootstrapped his way up into a career.
Wow.
So there's a plan B for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's tons and tons and tons of roles in the
Yeah.
broadcast world, like more than I had expected.
Yeah, yeah, because you never know. You know what I mean? You meet some interesting people and they like you did.
Yeah.
You move up. But anyhow, it's an there's many stories like that, but it's interesting to hear that was his journey up. So, plus he's got a website. So let's get back to India.
Okay, well, I'm assuming that you are going to continue making feature films, whether they're documentaries or maybe a fictional or biographical. So are there any fictional ideas that you have for a film, for example?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. I do have my eyes kind of set on a narrative film at some point. And I have been, I've been writing a script a little bit for one of those about I mean, it's kind of like similar to my own life in COVID. So it's a family. Each character gets their own chapter, the dad, the mom, the son, and the daughter. And, you know, it's just kind of, I want to be very focused on family dynamics and how people are going through different things, oftentimes behind closed doors, even though you're living in such close proximity, and how we hide those kind of struggles from each other, even though our family is the ones that can help us the most. So like, for example, the daughter might come home from college with like a pill habit or something like this, and just kind of following each character through their daily life to see what kind of stuff they have going on privately that has them behaving certain ways with their family members, and all the kinds of miscommunications that come from that.
Is there going to be a comedic element to that story?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's I wanted to model like real life as much as possible. So ideally I have a full range of, you know, emotions.
It's like The Office. It's
yeah, exactly.
Same concept, right? It's personal insights or, you know, searing commentaries on everything. That sounds good.
So you're, how long have you been writing screenplays?
Like seriously, just the past like 2 or 3 years. But I've been writing scripts since I was in like middle school. I was doing home videos with my younger brother. So I even have scripts dating back to like, you know, 2015, 2014 of like zombie apocalypse movies that me and my brother would be doing, that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and your brother won an award in our latest Hockomock Film Festival.
Yeah, for his drunk driving or
PSA?
texting while driving PSA.
PSA?
Yeah.
How long ago was that?
That was this year.
This year.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah.
Oh, last year.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he did it last year for this most recent.
Well, I should have gone to the ceremony.
You were not. You were in another place.
At another place, yeah. Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So which parent, which parent's gene did you and your younger brother get?
That's a good question. We definitely got our mom's sense of humor and goofiness. Like for sure, the way that we joke around came from our mom. But then I would say like my hard work and like drive came from my dad. So it's in my opinion, a perfect combination of the two of them, because I have this very like lighthearted, whimsical view of the world, which allows me to move through certain cultures and places that other people might find intimidating. But I'm able to do it with very, you know, strong precision because of my father. So that's like a good grouping of the two, I think.
Absolutely.
And how did that work out in India? How did that play out?
Beautifully. That was the first time I had traveled to a country where there was no culture shock period or period of adjustment. Like I got there and within a day I just felt comfortable. And that was like that felt really good for me because every time I travel, I'm usually going through periods of like, all right, I have to figure this out or I have to figure this out. But I think I've done this so many times now that getting there, I just felt immediately comfortable in the uncomfortability, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get that completely. You know, you feel like you'd been there 3 times before, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that certainly helps. Well, it's fun to hear about this India thing and writing scripts and whatever, because you know, you got to have a long-term plan, but you know that can change every week.
Yeah.
You know? But the idea of the international thing is clearly fascinating to potential for you. Africa, I know we talked about this the last time, in the Africa thing. And
yeah.
Now, do you have a website that people at home can go to?
I do.
Tell us about your journeys and everything.
Yes. If you want to go to MikeNoonevisuals.com, that is where you can find it. I'm also on YouTube. That's if you want to actually see me out in the world doing these things, YouTube, Mike Noone Visuals, again.
Okay, and Noone is spelled with an E on the end.
Correct.
So it's Noone.
Yes.
So Mike Noone.
Yes.
I just have to
That's
Google
good,
him.
Yeah, Mike No One.
Oh, right, Mike No One.
Yeah.
Who's he?
That's what Noone can also spell, no one. Get it?
Get it. Oh, I get it.
Yeah, so.
Okay. So what have been the challenges in the editing process? You're doing post-production now. Are you doing this all by yourself? Are you getting help? What's the day-to-day situation?
Yeah, so big difficulties. I'm working on a 10-year-old used laptop to do a 4K hour 15 minutes film with a ton of B-roll, ton of different source footages and stuff. So my computer loves to crash. It loves to break down when I'm exporting, all of that stuff. So I do have some editing help now. There's a university student in India, shout out Madhu. He is my junior editor. So certain projects, or if I need certain footage grouped and sent, he'll do that for me. But other than that, like the actual timeline is in my hands over here. Everybody else is back in India. And I'm just trying to figure out a way to do it in a way that's my computer's not dying.
Well, can't you get a new computer?
Yeah.
So I looked into getting a new computer, and it is like ludicrously expensive.
What's ludicrously?
Oh.
Ludicrously expensive.
It was like
Yeah.
$7 grand.
We can make that happen, Priscilla.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Do a fundraiser?
Right.
Should give us make a fundraiser or something.
Yeah, that would be huge.
Because you got the things to show and the story to tell.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
But can't your financial backers spring for that?
So we already talked to them about it, but the financial backers are Mani and Majit themselves.
Oh.
In India, rupees as well is their currency. So to convert that to USD to then buy is a lot. We're managing with this current laptop, but this will be the last project that I am able to do on it. That's been the biggest, like.
So you could do a desktop too, right? I mean, but you can't take it with you. But you could transfer the data back and forth. Because I have a desktop, a separate desktop.
Yeah.
And I have a massive file. What's trillion gigabytes or whatever it's called?
Terabyte.
Terabytes, yeah.
Yeah.
Beaucoup terabytes.
Yeah.
So it works on that. But I've always wondered about the laptop, editing on laptops.
Yeah, it's like, I have to give credit. It's the MacBook Pro that I'm working on. So I'll give credit to them for being able to handle what I'm doing for this long, considering it's a 2015 laptop, but it's very, it's definitely on its last legs going out.
So you have an auxiliary drive, right, that you back everything up on?
Yes, yeah. We have a couple backups, and it's also backed up on the cloud as well, just to be safe. But yeah.
So how do you see the distribution of this film? Do you have you made contacts, and where is it going to be distributed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first what we're going to do is take it for a screening tour. We're going to take it around a few cities in India. We're going to take it to a couple places in Europe. On the 30th of this month is a screening in Toronto, which will be our 4th screening as we edit it. Once it's officially finished and done, we'll take it. We have some lined up in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, a couple other countries like that have already expressed interest. The entire California state school system wants us to go and do it, but Manjeet keeps getting denied visa to come to the US. So
what's that about?
It beats me. He's gone 4 times and they keep on denying him. They say he's a flight risk, even though he's a
flight risk from where?
To like stay in the US and like hide and overstay his visa and all that.
Oh.
Even though he's very successful, he's got money, all that, but that's beyond me. But yeah, the Cal State school system would be great. We want to do, obviously, in Boston, the screening. And then after that, there's some streaming platforms that have already reached out with interest. We're going to shop it around as well.
Well, okay, so here's a perfect example of your need to reach out to Senator Markey and Senator Warren.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, because they will be able to get Manjeet here, all right? That's what you do.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, years and years ago, I reached out to, when I was living in New York, to Ben Gilman, who was our congressman, and he was chairman of the Formulations Committee at the time, and a good friend and colleague. And then Barney Frank, he was also, was he in the Senate or the House?
He was the House.
House. And I had worked on his early campaign when he ran for the Massachusetts Senate. So I knew both of them. And I had a very dear friend who was trapped in Germany. This is 1979, probably before you were born. And
Definitely.
the hostage situation. Remember the Iranian
Yep.
hostage? Yeah. And so our guy in Germany, at the U.S. consul, at the embassy there, when he came through, they said, no, we're not giving you a visa. We're not letting you in. You're Iranian. You're a bad boy. Of course, he wasn't. He was actually on a list of people he had been imprisoned by the Shah, and then when Khomeini took over, he was on the list he couldn't leave the country, and he snuck out on a small plane pretending to be a business guy, on a business trip. And so I had them send cables. This is back in the day, Bill, when you sent a cable.
Oh, right.
Remember, 1979. And they both sent cables from the State Department, and they let him in.
Wow.
So it does matter. So your federal representatives, and that would be Elizabeth Warren and Ed Markey, make them do their job. Help you out.
They love to do that stuff. This is what this is what they're paid for.
Exactly. And they have staff that does it. And yeah. So get him here, and especially if he's coming to Boston. When do you plan on that?
Ideally next year, in 2025 at some point. His next visa appointment is in like February, March range.
And you know what? His friend, who's also the co-financier here, this woman who went to Harvard, she should come too, and do something at Harvard. I mean, have a.
Yeah, definitely. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely could. She's dual citizen. So I usually joke to them and say they need to get married so he'll just get the citizenship. But no, that's a great idea actually, to reach out to Markey or Warren.
Yes, and the Harvard School of Government would be a good place too to share. This is a social justice issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
Big time.
It's a good idea.
Well, let's get back to the script writing. I'm always interested in writing scripts and whatever, because as I have bored our audience with for years, I've written a bunch of scripts, which I used to do a long time ago. And it's always, I find it a fascinating way, because when you're writing a script as opposed to writing a novel or whatever, which I've never done, you don't have to go on these long-winded explanations. You look at these novels and some of these books, 80% of it, you could just throw. Because the definition of of a book, some jokester once said, is a long magazine article, right? When you want to boil it down. So it's sort of the experience of reading, is, I guess, is what it is. So how do you do it? This interesting concept you have about families and emotions and real life. Do you have any models, or have you watched a bunch of TV shows that aspire, like The Office?
Yeah, so I do the same technique I learned from doing the documentary, which is ironic because that's much more of a true life tale that I'm trying to follow. But I take all these plot points that I want to have happen, and I put them on index cards, old school, and I literally will lay them out on the ground and say, okay, this has to happen before this for this to make sense. This I can sneak in before this, so they won't expect this next point. But I'll quite literally lay them out. And then what I did for this documentary is I lay all the points out, and as I start to find trails of plots, I just start to staple them together and say, okay, now this whole piece is now one card, and I start to move that in between other pieces.
Yeah, then you can start writing.
Yeah, then once I have that idea down, or usually that'll come after I write one time and find what aren't working, and then I'll do that and then go back and reorder things and rewrite from that perspective.
Because you look at these, I use a software from Scrivener. It's called Scrivener. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's from England. And it's a big script writing or novel writing thing, basically. And a couple of others. But they do have in these programs index cards.
Perfect.
Not literally, but so there's a whole drop down that says index cards or whatever. So up pops this template, card number 1. So you fill out card number 1, opening scene, car pulls up to fast food, okay. Or for opening scene, they're in a car, right? Second card is John Travolta and what's his name, Samuel Jackson are talking about burgers. And third, the shots on Travolta talking about the tasty burger he's had. Card 4, they pull up to those poor kids' house. This is Pulp Fiction, which I know you're gonna watch someday.
Yeah.
But index cards, it's like I don't even think it's old school because it's so. I mean, it's old school if you're so good at it, you could just start writing. You know what I mean? But it makes writing so much simpler. I mean, not any less difficult, but it's just simpler. The difficulty is because, as Mike was saying, you can switch the cards around and make a couple of changes. So.
Well, my son is a film producer, but during COVID, he became a screenwriter because films were being produced during COVID. That's 3 years. And he had been reading scripts. The very first job he got in Hollywood after he graduated was to go back to Silva Pictures where he had interned. And what did they make him do? He had to read scripts. He had to read 4 scripts a day. So he was up, he didn't get much sleep. And he had to summarize those and suggest whether they were good scripts to make a film with, And so he's been reading scripts for 27 years. So he writes a treatment. And a treatment is a fancy word for a summary of the movie, okay? And from that treatment, he just sits down at his computer and he just writes. And because he in his head, he's wired to the way a script is written. And as you pointed out, Bill, you set the scene. You create the sound. And then you have a script. You have a description of the characters and where they are at and so forth. And then you have words that are said by the actors who are in that particular scene. And I saw him do this firsthand. He spent 2.5 months at my house last summer, and he wrote this script called Floyd, which he has since sold. And it's an action thriller with a twist. And I was amazed. I used to teach creative writing in my former life, and but he just sits down there at the computer, and he's writing just from his treatment. He's writing each scene, and almost effortlessly. Although I know it was.
Well, he's done it.
He's done it, yeah. But he has such concentration, and he also has that experience of having read so many scripts. It's sort of like a composer, don't you think? You know, a composer has a melody in his or her head, and then they repeat that theme, that melody, or the theme, in a symphony in different ways. Adagio, what's the one for fast?
Allegro.
Thank you. And so forth. And you see, and writing a script is very much like that, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's certain, going down one level, there's certain concepts like a third, a third, a third, right? I mean, you divide it into three. You set the scene in the first, introduce the characters, and you give a couple of clues. You know, if the big scene towards the end is a woman playing a guitar or whatever, boom, you introduce the fact that she knows how to play the guitar in the first third. So when it does happen, you know, it's not sort of bolt from the blue. And then another thing is basic is the character arc. In other words, you have to have it's like Jerry Maguire, Show Me the Money. It's the classic character arc, you know, where he's just a loser and he can't get a break, and Cuba Gooding Jr. is beating him up because he hasn't got his money and all that stuff. So that's often taught. I once took a film script writing course, and the model we used was, the teacher used was Jerry Maguire. And the whole concept of a character arc is very obvious in that.
Well, what I find is so interesting, and maybe you do too, Mike, is how you have a main character and a main plot, but then you have subplots with different characters, and somehow you're weaving those stories so that they actually come together and somehow manifest themselves in the greater theme. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
But you have to integrate, obviously.
Yes.
You have to integrate them. Like
exactly.
Yeah,
I'm in this book club.
Tough part.
I'm in this book club. This is sort of amusing. We meet on Thursdays. We've got to meet tomorrow. And so we read these novels. And so I once took a speed reading course. And there's many different techniques in speed reading, you know. So not one size fits all. So one of the techniques I learned about was you read the first chapter, and then so you concentrate on it. Then you go to the last chapter. So the second thing you do is read the last chapter, or indeed the last two chapters. So you have an idea of who survives at the end, which is like the character arc, you know, who survives at the end. So once you've finished reading the last two chapters, or the last chapter, then you go back to the second chapter and you start your journey through. But it often speaks to what you're saying. What's your first name? Priscilla? I was about to call you Camilla. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, please don't do that.
I don't know why. But because you can see these subplots get developed. But if you've read the last two chapters, you know which subplot doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So that it sets you, so you can concentrate more on the characters.
Okay, Bill, I can see that as a speed reading technique. On the other hand, you're missing the enjoyment of all the intertwining and the convolution of plots. I mean,
Priscilla, you're missing the point, which is
characters.
Characters are what make novels great.
Right.
The personal journeys of the character. It's not the destination, it's the journey.
Right, right.
But if you know the destination, it sort of lightens your intellectual load. So you can...
And also reduce your enjoyment.
Well...
My opinion.
Yeah, it's a free country. You can think that. But in my book club, I bring this up. And I get shouted down every single time.
Of course you do. You just did.
Yeah, well, but I have talked to people, I found people who do it, and it is, and the other speed reading technique, we can cut this out later, is you look at, you're reading along, and you don't look at the word, you look at the space between the words.
Mm-hmm.
And this really works. And I don't know the mechanics and the words to describe it, but if you just start looking at the space, your eyes pick up the word, this word and that word, but they're not exerting as much effort in sort of processing the word, because you're looking at the space, but your eyes have peripheral vision.
Okay, so getting back to
the
our
subject.
guest, Mike Noone, and the movie is called The Untouchables, Laugh Out Cast, which is a play on words and gets to the point of the film. So obviously this is a documentary, and have you any plans for other documentaries, and has this particular documentary made you think about other possibilities?
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that after having gotten to this point where I'm at with this one, I could definitely see myself doing more documentaries into the future. I've been approached to do a new documentary after this one on Cape Verde, on the African islands off the west coast of Africa, which I would love.
Like the Azores, closer to Africa.
Closer, yeah, exactly.
Madeira.
Yes.
And what would that entail? I mean, we have a large Cape Verdean population in Brockton,
yes.
Next city to us.
That's where
and New
they came
Bedford.
from.
I'm sorry.
That Brockton Cape Verdeans are the ones that reached out to me to do this.
Oh.
Really? So you've already, people have reached out to you. That's
And there
good.
are Cape Verdean filmmakers, aren't there, in Brockton?
Yes.
There's one, I forget its name, but yeah.
I wouldn't know, I don't think.
Oh, okay. So what would the theme be?
So the Cape Verde island chain is 10 islands.
Right.
And apparently each one is extremely different ecologically, culturally, all of that. So it would be like a 10-part expose, the country as a whole, but each episode would be covering one island. And a lot of the islands have, deep histories with colonialism, slavery. It was a big inter-oceanary point of ships stopping and whatnot. So there's a very mixed, it's very mixed race, very mixed culture from Europe, Africa, all that. So just to explore the history and the differences in the islands, I think is the main, what they want to cover.
And the people who have approached you, do they have they located funding for this?
No.
No.
Not yet.
Because that's the big hurdle, isn't it?
Yes.
In
big
making
time.
movies. If you have no money, you have no movie.
Well, you got to break it down. You need funding for a trailer, right? I mean, that's the key.
Yeah.
Then you can queue it up to the funding. So the most important funding is like $5,000.
Yeah.
Get that trailer made and financed and looking good, and then you got a shot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's part of the reason I'm excited about the Untouchable documentary, is because I'll now have a, proof that I can go and do something like this to present to people who are giving out grants or funds of any type. So that is our goal for the Cape Verde documentary.
And are there lots of grants for documentaries?
Yeah, there are. They're usually very specific though. Like one organization will be funding a documentary on something that is related to their organization, typically. There are some broader funds. I know like Sundance has a big grant that they'll give out. But even so, they still have criteria. So part of the process is to find places that are, giving grants that match up with the project that we're doing. Which at this stage, I haven't even looked into that. I'm trying to finish up this India one first, but that's kind of the next
And
steps.
when do you anticipate that the public will be introduced to this documentary?
Ideally, we're looking to release it no later than April of next year.
And where would you release it?
On streaming platform.
Okay.
So that's we've been reached out to. We also want to shop it to some places, somewhere like Netflix, like somewhere with some weight to the name.
Yep.
Would be great. But the beautiful thing about streaming is that they do it based on like time periods. So we could license it to one streaming platform for 6 months, a year, and then be able to go and take it somewhere else. So if it does well on that one streaming platform, after a year,
Have you thought about locally here, PBS, WHDH?
I would love to. Yeah.
I mean, that's something you can just knock on the door and walk in and say, hey, look what I got. Are you interested? Now, maybe, Bill, we should get him in touch with Gino.
Well, of course, great idea.
Yeah.
Well, he would know who.
Absolutely.
He would know who to
Yeah,
talk
I appreciate that.
Do you know Gino?
I do not know.
Del Gorgio. Gino Del Gorgio. He was head documentarian at WGBH for 30 years.
No, he did some of that certainly, but his company made medical documentaries. In other words, when
Interesting.
But they were documentaries
about
nevertheless.
medical instruments and things like that. I think he did a lot of corporate work. So
Yes, but he also, what was that thing he did?
he did a couple of. Right, he did
Arctic.
about the Greeley Foundation. The Greeley, the guy that got stuck in the Arctic.
In the Arctic,
He did that one too.
Right. So,
So we could help you on that one. But getting back to, on the same topic, when I watch Netflix now, it's very interesting because they have a lot of documentaries in Netflix.
Yeah.
And Netflix is picking up on the fact that Bill Ames likes to watch documentaries. And by God, they're populating. So I like financial history.
Really?
Business history. And so I've watched a couple of these documentaries, and due to the genius of, whatever algorithms or whatever they call it, they've queued up more and more of these business history things. So I find those very, because the dramas and whatever on Netflix I watch them too much, but it's always, you can't really count on them from an intuitive thing, but when it's a documentary and it's about a certain subject that you know something, but you can sort of count on the fact it's going to be interesting, You don't have to worry about the plots or the characters or any of this stuff. So.
Yeah, and the thing that I think gives a lot of strength to our documentary is that it's large portion of it is his stand-up sets. So we walk the line between like a comedy special and a documentary. 'Cause about half of the movie, more or less, is just him on stage telling the jokes and reacting with the audience and whatnot. And then the other half is in between those jokes, talking to his family about the backgrounds of them, talking to other comedians about the art form in general, because it's only, stand-up comedy is only like 15 years oldish in India. So to talk to the comedians about that and how they're in India introducing their culture to the art form of stand-up itself is a big part of it as well. But like you said, like ideally, if we get into Netflix or something, our doc could either be in your documentary recommendations or it could be in somebody's comedy special recommendations and get a little double dip in that sense.
Yeah, because they can do it.
But that's what gives a documentary interest. And because people love comedy, and they love to learn about happenings in other worlds, other universes, and so it's kind of a good combination. I think Netflix would be very interested, and I think PBS would be too.
Yeah. At this point, we're like anybody wants us.
You should put a little about Indian cuisine in it. Weave Indian cuisine. So one of your meta tags could be Indian cuisine.
That's a good one. That'll get people.
That'll get people. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you take you out to dinner, like My Dinner with Andre. Did you ever see that? This is ancient history, but
It really is ancient.
But it was good. It was Andre. Who was that famous actor who was in that? Who was sort of this nerdy guy. But anyway, it takes place in most of it takes place in a restaurant in New York. And
the whole movie, right, is them just at dinner?
No, well, pretty much a lot of it is. But so what you could do is you could sit down with your guy in an Indian restaurant, and while you're talking about it, there are the dishes coming and going. You could talk about the Indian cuisine. That would get you a meta tag right there.
It's funny you say that because we have a scene in the movie with him and two of his friends at a tea shop doing almost that, where they're talking and they keep serving stuff while they're talking and whatnot.
So if you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah.
you could sort of get into the foodie thing.
Yeah, it's a good idea. He has some food jokes too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a
because they had a good Indian restaurant in Harvard Square because I lived in Cambridge for a long time, so I used to go there.
So good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're thinking about going to Cape Verde if in fact that you get some funding and so forth. So people out there who might be listening, who have $5,000 or $10,000.
Yeah, what's the budget, do you think?
That they'd like to invest in this young man, and
not sure.
Yeah, so.
But when you make a documentary, just to interrupt before I forget my question.
Oh.
What's in your head, like $1,000 a minute, or because there is a rule of thumb, right?
Yeah, so it really depends on the scale. It's a little different because my crew is so small. It's usually me and like one other person that are shooting these. Full budget like documentaries are going with like 10 to 20 people to these places sometimes. So,
well, let's just say it's an average. Average is an average
for the full budget for everything.
But not like the Civil War series or anything like that.
No,
but sort of in your world.
Yeah, like probably 500 to 750,000 from beginning to end for a
500,000
producing everything. Yeah, that's not my fee, but for the equipment and travel and research and all that, it can get up there. It can be done for significantly less.
Less than $1 million.
Yeah, for like our size
Wow.
group doing stuff, yes.
Boy,
it gets up pretty quickly, pretty fast.
Yeah.
And the more people we bring on, again, more, but
because they charge a lot of money, those people.
a ton of money, yeah. That's why I'm doing
voiceovers,
Yep.
things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can learn voiceover skills, right?
Yeah, well, the Malini is our voiceover artist. His manager did our. We have animated segments in the documentary, and she's the voiceover for that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm filming, editing, all that, because we don't have the funds to bring other people on.
Well, that's if you know that. Speaking of this, that Borderland documentary we did here, Kevin Friend did a great job, and he needed a voice of Grover Cleveland, and he needed a couple of other voices, and he was very good at it. You know, he could
Kevin's
change
great
the
at
voice, and it saved us.
Yeah.
Probably $4,000 or $5,000.
Oh yeah.
Just the fact that Kevin could do it.
Yeah.
You know, and who cares?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I mean,
The average viewer won't know.
Yeah.
Well, we have 2 minutes left, so give us a summary of how you actually feel right now. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? What, having had this wonderful experience in India?
Mm-hmm. So, I am not finished yet. We're still editing. So right now, I'm on the verge of bliss, but I'm like very stressed. We had 2 of our audio guys drop out 2 weeks ago, and our color grader went on vacation unexpectedly, disappeared, and we have our Toronto screening coming up. So we have right now I'm in crunch time where I have 8 days to get this together, and it is not together right now. So I'm very stressed at the moment. However, that's part of it, and I enjoy the kind of energy, like, are we gonna get this done in time?
So we thank you so much, Mike, because given what you just said, it's quite a privilege to have you here.
Absolutely.
We're taking an hour or more away from your precious time to get this done in 8 days. So good luck, and thanks again for joining us, and good luck in Toronto.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
And tell everybody at home again about your website and what it is.
Yes, Mike Noone Visuals. Mike, Noone, visuals.com. Instagram, it's that handle. YouTube, everything, Mike Noone Visuals.
So Mike Noone Visuals, that's VISUALS?
Yes.
.com.
.com.
Very easy. Thanks, Mike.
I'm going there right away.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Always good.